Hello, my name is Lee Presser. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Presser.
Welcome to Conversation with Lee Presser. Community policing is a system of allocating police officers to particular areas so that they become familiar with the local people and the local people become familiar with the police officers. It's a strategy that focuses on police building ties with and working closely with members of the community. If the public believes that the police are there to help them and to protect them from crime, when asked, people are more likely to point out those who have committed a crime. Our guest today is the Edwardsville, Illinois Director of Police, Jay Keeven. Chief Keeven came to the Edwardsville Police Department in February 2013 after a long career with the Illinois State Police, where he rose to the rank of Major. Today we're going to talk about policing an old but thriving community in Metro East. Chief Jay Keeven, welcome to Conversation.
Thank you for having me here.
Well, let me start off by Illinois is having budget problems. Well, actually, there is no budget. That's the problem. Is that having any impact on your police department?
As it stands now, no. Our city is fiscally prudent, and our budget has been, I guess, secure, for lack of a better term. We are currently in the budgeting process for our next fiscal year, which will begin May 1st. But it has not had a great negative impact on our police department as of yet.
Do you get state money, or is all of your money come through the city of Edwardsville?
Well, a large portion of our funds come from general revenue, which is
that's city.
Through the city, right. Which is largely in our community made up of sales tax revenue. If you come through the Glen Carbon, Edwardsville area, you'll see there are a lot of businesses, there are a lot of restaurants. Our two biggest employers in Madison County are Madison County government and the Southern Illinois University of Edwardsville.
Neither which generates any tax money for you.
Neither pay property tax.
Right.
But they also hire a lot of individuals that come into our city during the day and they buy gasoline at our gas stations, and they eat lunch at our restaurants, and they come back and have dinner at our restaurants, and they shop at our Target stores and our merchants within town. So our sales tax is fairly consistent. I mean, we don't see the high and low swings during a good or bad economy, but we do have a consistent sales tax. We also receive some funding, and some of our federal grant funding is a pass-through from the Illinois Department of Transportation Division of Traffic Safety, and those funds have not yet been released. We continue to move forward with our DUI enforcement initiatives and our seatbelt and traffic safety initiatives. Eventually, I'm sure we'll be refunded for the funds that we've outlaid for those expenditures.
You hope.
I hope.
Well, everybody's hoping that the state finally gets its act together and that monies which are promised are actually paid.
We understand, but we're still to the point that we are fully functioning. We're not in
right.
crisis mode within our city. Again, we have city leaders that are very fiscally prudent. We have a good surplus in our general revenue so that we can withstand the storm for quite a bit longer. But realistically, I think the state of Illinois could take a lesson from the management of the city of Edwardsville.
And Madison County as well. But as far back as I mean decades I'm talking about, as far back as I can remember, Edwardsville has always been in the black and has run a very tight ship financially.
Well, Edwardsville has good government, which is a big draw for me. I left the Illinois State Police to come be a police chief in the city of Edwardsville. I did not have a desire to be a police chief. My goal was to do my career with the state police and probably transition into a second career in the private sector. But I wanted to be a part of this community. My way to be a part of this community was to apply for an open police chief position, which I did. And I was drawn to the community because if you want to have a good police department, you have to start with good government. And this community has good government.
Mm-hmm. What's your relationship with like Glen Carbon or other cities that are around you?
Our police department has a great working relationship. I know that Glen Carbon and Edwardsville are often competing for business. So, but what we've learned, I think, over at least the years that I've been here, that typically what's good for Edwardsville is good for Glen Carbon, and vice versa. So I think we have a great working relationship with the city of Glen Carbon. I know as far as police agencies, we have a great working relationship with their police department. We have a great working relationship with SIU, Edwardsville's police department, Maryville's police department. We couldn't ask for a better sheriff's department. The state police is there when we call them out of District 11, Collinsville. They cover our area as well. And then along with our policing efforts, when someone is in the court system, we have a good court system in Edwardsville. We have a prosecutor in Tom Gibbons that is a no-nonsense prosecutor.
Yes, Mr. Gibbons has been a guest here, and I have to agree with you. It's very no-nonsense. So you have good working relationships with the towns around you, and then you also have a good working relationship with the cities, with the citizens of your city as well.
Well, certainly, and again,
well, you say certainly, but there is in the news plenty of discussion of towns that don't have a good working relationship between the public and the police department. And that's over the last number of years, especially since the Michael Brown incident, has become a much bigger issue. Edwardsville, on the other hand, is just the opposite. You have a great relationship, as I understand it.
We do have a great relationship with the citizens within our community. And policing as a whole over the last 1.5 to 2 years has been put under a microscope. And there are some who would agree, myself included, that we should be under a microscope. We are public servants. My salary, everything that I do through enjoyment of life, taking my wife and children on vacation, paying for my children's college degree, it comes from tax dollars. I'm a public servant. So therefore, I should be able to answer for everything I do. If I don't have a good answer for why we're doing something, then maybe I should rethink of whether or not we should be doing that. In our community, again, you start with good government. Good government provides you with the resources you need to run an effective police department. Then you move from that into the citizens that we serve. And there is a bond of trust in this community like none other that I have seen. Quite frankly, I have worked in Chicagoland area, I've worked in East St. Louis, I've worked in Carbondale, I've worked in Alton, I've worked in many communities, and I've never seen the bond between the citizens we serve and their police officers. Our citizens take ownership in their police officers, and I love to see that. We have a great response when we ask for assistance. For example, not too long ago, we had a shooting incident, which is odd for our community. The violent crime rate in our community is minimal. And before we were at the scene, neighbors were coming out of their homes to approach our officers to show them or tell them what they had seen. One woman had a video on her phone that she took of the incident as it occurred. And within 45 minutes, that case was solved. The vehicle that was involved was stopped, I believe in Cahokia, by a state trooper because we had an excellent description of the vehicle. I've worked in communities where people are afraid to share information with the police.
I was going to ask you, you say you worked in East St. Louis. There's an example of places where you probably didn't get a whole lot of information out of the neighbors, right?
And quite often we didn't. There was either, if it wasn't a distrust for the police officers, it was certainly a fear of the repercussions that may occur if you cooperate with the police officers. So there were
from the criminals.
Yes, repercussions from the criminals. So, they knew that the state police was there to investigate a shooting incident, but they also knew that we were eventually going to leave. So quite often people were very reluctant and uncomfortable in sharing information that I believe most good citizens would want to share with you. People do not want to compromise with crime. That's what's interesting and nice about our community. And when I say Edwardsville, if you look at the entire Metro East region, for the most part, every chief of police is going to be able to brag on the great things that their community does. Now, I'm a bit biased towards my community, but I certainly think that we are kind of just a notch above with all of the services that we offer, not only within the police department, but as the city as a whole.
Well, you know, you make an interesting point here. If you just step across the river into Missouri, and the average citizen over there, when they're thinking about, well, Metro East, because of television news, because of the way the Post-Dispatch describes Metro East, oftentimes people just think that this is all East St. Louis. And it's not, because East St. Louis is a very, very small segment. I don't know if they have 25, 35,000 people in the whole town.
I'd be surprised if they have 15,000 residents.
Really, that's small now. And Metro East is something on the order of 500 to 600,000 people.
Sure. But I think as, you know, we are doing so many things that draw people from both sides of the river to our community. So our Dare Car Show every year. So this year will be our 25th year of our Dare Car Show. We've been doing the Dare program within the District 7 schools for 25 years. The largest chunk of funding, aside from salaries for our 2 full-time Dare officers, comes from the monies that we raised during this car show. Last year we had almost 500 cars at the District 7 high school parking lot. So, you know, the high school or the school administrative staff is just phenomenal to work with. We love being in the schools. We have a good footprint in our schools with 4 full-time school resource officers, 2 full-time Dare officers, and these events—
Are these commissioned
These
officers?
are sworn officers, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And beyond providing security within the schools, you know, it goes back to building that bond of trust. You know, 2 years ago, I had a woman approach me after a Dare graduation, was telling me about Officer Don, her Dare officer, who happened to be the retired deputy chief of the police department. But he will always be Officer Don to her because she knew him through the Dare program. The more interaction we can have of a positive nature within our community, I mean, obviously, you know, when the police arrive, quite often it's because you've been involved in a crash, or you've been the victim of crime, or maybe you're being looked at as being the perpetrator of crime and we're going to arrest you. None of those 3 scenarios are good things. But when we can be involved in the schools, when we can be involved in the city festivals and picnics and the myriad of parades that we do within our community, those are all positive things. And I think that's what builds that bond of trust, those positive interactions with our community between our police officers and our citizens.
Mm-hmm. You've told me before we went on the air that the Edwardsville Police are involved in a wide range of community outreach.
Sure.
This is part of the community policing thought process?
Sure. And, you know, community policing can be considered a program, and maybe everything starts with a program. You know, I'm proud of the fact that we are still very much involved in DARE. DARE was a federal program. It was funded by the federal government with grants to the states and local communities that are grants to the local communities that came through the states. But when that money dried up 15 years ago, a lot of communities couldn't afford to continue on with the program.
Oh, now I see what you meant when you were saying that this event would fund those 2 officers.
Yes.
Because they would have gone away in other communities?
Yes, and our city leaders said, hey, look, we are still going to make a commitment to the DARE program. Our officers said, hey, we can raise funds, we can do a car show, we can do charity events, we can raise funds to help support the program as well. And so the program becomes more of a philosophy. So if community policing is a program, I think you're missing the boat. It needs to truly be a philosophy. Now, understanding that a lot of the things we do start out as a program, the DARE program, the Youth Police Academy program, but it eventually becomes ingrained and it becomes a service that is expected and well delivered within our community. So it becomes more of a philosophy. So people know the first name of the officer that is in their community. People see our bicycle officers. You know, several years ago, Jerry Kane with Madison County Transit formed a wonderful partnership with us and bought us 2 I-Force policing bicycles. These are top-of-the-line police bicycles. They are equipped with lights and siren and markings that clearly indicate that they're a police bike. Our officers ride these bikes and they spend time in the subdivisions. They spend times on the 130 miles of trails that we have within Madison County, and people see them and they interact with them.
I guess that was the point I was hoping you were going to make, was I guess there was this transition in America where there used to be the beat cop who would actually walk the streets, and so of course he knew everybody and everybody knew him. Then they got in cars.
Sure.
But that's decades ago, and they got in cars and there was this distance that was created because they were in a car and they're driving by. Yes, we still know them, but not as intimately as when they walked by and had a conversation. So you're saying that these police officers on the bikes are more or less returning to this old routine of
Absolutely.
being closer to people.
Absolutely, along with our foot patrols and neighborhood checks and getting out of your squad car and talking with individuals. You know, you talk about a transition time in American policing, and you're correct. In the 1970s, we we're pretty much moved away from the beat cop that walks the downtown area, that walks the neighborhoods. And in an effort to use technology and be more efficient, we got ourselves into squad cars. And it was wonderful for the simple fact that we could get across town very quickly to address crime and address other incidents. At that point in time in the 70s, you know, we were measuring our success in the world of policing in response time. How quickly can we get to where you're at to take a report? We weren't solving crime. We were seeing how quickly we can get to you to take a report to document the fact that you have been involved in a crime.
Yeah.
You know, obviously our goal is to prevent crime,
Yeah.
and also to prevent the fear of crime, because quite frankly, the fear of crime is as devastating as the crime itself. You know, if someone is afraid to come out of their house because they are afraid at nighttime that somebody may attack them, you know, they're a prisoner in their own home. So the crime itself is horrible. The fear of crime is just as bad. So having that interaction within our community, you know, the officers on the bikes, the walking the downtown beats, I mean, we still shake doors at night. We walk through the business areas, business districts, and we rattle doors. And we'll leave a little note if we find something that we think is odd. We will call a business owner and say, hey, your back door is unlocked. Did you leave it unlocked? You know, maybe not a call you want to receive at 11 o'clock at night, but it certainly is better than a call to say your business has been ransacked or somebody has broken into your business.
Right. Which in many other communities there is going on.
Certainly. And it occurs in our community as well. I mean, we have theft cases and we have burglary cases, but again, our crime rate is very low when you look at the fact that we're almost 27,000 residents.
One time I had Coroner Nan was sitting here, and in the last 5 minutes I say, hey, is there anything we haven't talked about? And all of a sudden he tells me about all these heroin deaths,
Sure.
which caught me off guard because when I was young, heroin was something that was like, holy cow, nobody gets near that. But now I'm told that in most communities, including Edwardsville, that heroin is there. Is that true or not?
That is true, and heroin is a serious problem. We believe that it is starting with prescription meds, so young people.
Like Vicodin and,
yes.
and Oxycontin and...
Young people getting into mom or dad or grandma and grandpa's medicine cabinet, maybe taking expired medications, maybe taking current medications. And that heroin euphoria is similar to the feeling that one would receive if they are abusing prescription medicine. The problem with heroin, and there's a lot of problems with all drugs, but heroin is just so difficult to regulate the purity of the heroin. So an individual who may be thinking that they're getting a lesser dose may be injecting themselves with a lethal dose, or maybe using a lethal dose if they're snorting heroin as well. It's interesting that you mentioned Steve Nunn, and one of the things that makes our community great is how many people are engaged, and I talked about good government. You know, Steve has worked tirelessly with Tom Gibbons and Sheriff John Lakin to get that message out in our high schools. I've been invited to...
Is it working?
I believe it is. I believe, I mean, all you can do is kind of show those devastating effects. to talk about those devastating effects. And some might think, oh my gosh, we're talking to 5th grade kids, 6th grade kids, 7th grade kids about things that the average person wouldn't think that they would be exposed to. But unfortunately, we currently live in a world where young children are exposed to drugs, to some drugs that have the potential to take their lives.
I'm old, but not that old, and I never even saw marijuana until I went to SIU. I mean, to hear about drugs down at the level you were just discussing, that's like, wow, what change has come over society?
Yeah, and I wish I had the answer for that. All I can tell you is that I really believe that the efforts that we put forward within the schools, and especially like our DARE program, talks about a decision model. DARE has gone through massive changes over the years. It used to be, basically the Nancy Reagan say no to drugs, say no to drugs and alcohol, say no to cigarettes. Now we are really teaching young kids, and we're starting with 5th grade with a full DARE program, and we hit them again in 7th grade with a decision-making model. So understanding that the decisions you make can impact your entire life and can impact a lot of other people's, and let's go through the steps to make a good decision. We're even starting to touch with 1st and 3rd graders now on a little bit of the DARE model. So, I mean, we work tirelessly as a community. Unfortunately, a couple years back, we had a couple of heroin overdoses within our community, and it was shocking to all of us. I mean, we live in a nice, safe community. We live in a community that offers a lot of things for our children to do. We offer a lot of things for our young adults and our seniors to do. So there are avenues to, have social time and exercise time and events. I mean, we provide so much within our community that we would hope people wouldn't turn to drugs, but yet some still do.
Yes, and sometimes they pay with their lives.
Unfortunately, that is the case.
Right. Well, it seems like you're doing a good job of trying to reach out to young people. Are they responding as like, wow, yeah, this is good information, or what do these old guys know?
Well, that is certainly always in the back of our minds. So when you give a presentation and you're standing before 7th graders or high schoolers, and you're a 50-year-old man, you're exactly right. That's sometimes the perception. But we have partnered with other entities that will bring young people in to say, hey, these are the mistakes that I have made, don't make them. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to learn the lesson because your best friend died of an overdose. Nobody wants to learn the lesson because you are now facing a prison sentence because you drove drunk and killed a family of 3 that were just trying to get home from the movie theater. So those lessons are hard. And when we have people that are willing to stand up and say, hey, I've learned this hard lesson, please listen to what I'm telling you, I think it does resonate. And if you look at District 7, and you talked about struggling financially, the school districts are struggling in Illinois. But if you look at the product that they're putting out within our school district, it's amazing. I mean, we have you can open the paper any day of the week and see young kids that are getting scholarships to go to college. You can see kids that are excelling in sports, kids that are excelling in chess clubs, kids that are excelling in all kinds of extracurricular activities, and that's what we want to see. That's the mark of a solid community that wants nothing but good for their youth, because they're going to be running our city one day. One day, hopefully when I'm in a retirement home, there's a kid that's in high school right now that's going to be our chief of police, that's going to make sure that I'm safe.
And you want to make sure that he knows what he's doing, too.
Absolutely.
So, one of my staff wanted me to ask you, are you still offering CPR courses?
We would make arrangements if somebody wanted to take a CPR course. Obviously, we have officers who are trained as instructors.
Or is that the fire department?
And then we also work with the fire department, who has officers trained as instructors. So if somebody is interested in learning CPR, I'm sure we would make those arrangements. All of our officers go through that training every year, just to make sure that they are prepared.
Do they offer this through the high school or the junior high at all, or is that something that perhaps they ought to?
They may through the fire department. I don't know that I don't believe. Matter of fact, I
It
know
just
our
seems
police
to me
department
like
doesn't
that's
offer it.
just a nice piece, a nice to know that should be handed off to young people.
Certainly.
Perhaps that ought to be thought about. So Edwardsville's doing okay. Now the crime that you have, and I'm not going to go into, there's a personal story I could tell you where I observed people who came from outside and robbed the QT and ran off, and I just happened to be there at the time when this was occurring, and that just brought to mind that I'll bet a lot of those kind of crimes, that's from the outside, isn't it? People just show up in Edwardsville.
Well, I think
because
some
there's
are.
stuff here.
Sure, some are. But once again, when we have a incident that we need help with, our recent Hudson Jewelers burglary, we put the information out on Facebook, and within hours there's tens of thousands of views and shares of that information, and it didn't take long before those individuals were identified. Mm-hmm. If you have a community like I believe we have, and in many of the communities in Metro East are this way, but your citizens are not willing to compromise with crime. They're just, basically, we're not going to have this here. They come forward and they help you solve those crimes. I mean, we have 43 sworn officers in the city of Edwardsville. Realistically, if we had to carry the burden of making sure that all crimes are solved and the community is safe all the time, you couldn't do that with 43 people. Mm-hmm. We have a community of nearly 27,000 residents who are not going to compromise with crime.
They're looking out for each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We're down to the last couple of minutes here. Is there anything we haven't covered that you wanted to say to the audience?
Well, certainly, we enjoy a nice standard of living within our community, and our police department is proud to be a part of that. But there are so many entities that make that happen. And when government at different levels can work together to provide a safe and thriving environment, to me that's success. And if you look throughout Madison County, and especially in the realm where I deal with in the law enforcement world, with our prosecutor's office, with our coroner's office, everybody has the same goal in mind. And when you are all working towards that same goal, you achieve your goals. So I enjoy being a part of this community. I hope to stay here for many, many more years. But I enjoy being here because it's a community that works well together.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to thank you for coming and sharing your thoughts, your philosophy of policing with the audience. Oftentimes, there's a lot of people who, they just don't get to interact with the police. They see you. They don't necessarily fear, like some people fear the police, but they don't necessarily fear it, but they don't know enough about the police department. So what you've done here has really helped to put their minds at ease that you're actually trying to protect them.
Well, if people want to get engaged, we certainly offer ride-alongs. We just began our Citizens Police Academy. We have a Youth Police Academy, so we're certainly welcoming anybody who would like to get an inside look at our department.
Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
And I've been speaking with the Chief of Police or Director of Police of Edwardsville, Illinois, Jay Keeven. This is going to be uploaded to YouTube, so if you want other people to see it, just look up his name and Conversation with Lee Presser. We'll see you next time. Thanks.